Okay, so it's time to get started with installing our application, getting it up and running, and starting Redis in a Docker container. So here we're going to start with GitHub. I'm at the GitHub repo for the training course here. And what I'm going to do is clone that repo to my local machine. So I'll copy this and switch to the terminal here, where I'm going to do git clone and then whatever we've copied. Off we go, we've copied that, so great. Now I have to cd into the folder where it is and make sure that everything came down, which it did. So this is a Node.js application, so first thing I'm going to do is npm install to get our dependencies. Let's do that, let it install all the dependencies. Okay, so that's happened. And what we're going to do next is start the Redis server. So we've provided the Redis server with the appropriate modules that you're going to need for this course as a Docker container. And we have provided a Docker Compose YAML in the repo here. So all we're going to do is do Docker Compose, and make sure you do Docker minus compose, because Docker space compose is a different command. Up and then -d to make it run in the background. So it started. What you might find is that with yours, it'll download the Docker container first because you won't have it locally. I previously had it. So we'll verify that's running with Docker PS. So we have something running there. We have a Redis instance running in a Docker container. And what we need to do now is load some data into it. So the course comes with a data loader, and we're going to invoke that and tell it to load all the data. So we're going to do npm run load all. So that's loading our data. It's loading data about users, locations, check-ins, the entities in the system. It's also creating a stream in Redis. It's creating a Bloom filter that we'll use later. And it's basically setting up everything that we need. So that's finished. So we should now have all the data we need in Redis. So one way that we can look at that is by running Redis CLI from the Docker container. So what I'm going to do now is do docker exec -it redis crash course, and then the program we want to run inside the container is Redis CLI. So we're now connected to Redis inside our container, and if our data loaders worked, we should have a whole load of keys in here. So if I run db size, we have 1,432 keys, and if I want to look at a location in Redis, so let's pick, for example, location 200. I need to do hgetAll, because it's a hash. We're going to get everything out of the hash. Then the key name, which is going to be ncc locations 200. And there we have it. So Katya's kitchen. So we've successfully loaded the data in there. The other thing that you might want to do is, if you've installed Redis Insight, which I recommend that you do, would be start it up now and configure a local Redis. So I'm starting Insight. It's going to start up in my browser here. Here we go. And I've got another Redis instance here, but we want to add the local one. So we're going to add Redis using host and port. So 127.0.0.1, port is 6379. That's the port we're exposing from Docker. Let's give it a name, so we'll call it Node Crash Course. And we don't need to use name and password in this case. We've not set one of those. We're going to do add Redis database. Now I have this new one, Node Crash Course. Click on this. And now I can browse the same database. So you'll see it says I've got 1K keys. It's approximated those. If I go in the browser here, we can find that same hash. So let's find ncc locations 200. And when I click on it, you'll see that I've got a visual representation of the same data that we had here in Redis CLI. So if you prefer Insight, by all means use Insight. It'll get you all the way through the course, and it's a great tool. Then finally, what we need to do is start our application up. So let's swap back to the terminal here and quit out of Redis CLI for a moment. So here in the Node.js crash course folder that I cloned the repo to, I'm going to do npm run dev. That's going to start what we call the API server component of the application. It's going to run it with NodeMon. So if I make any code changes, application will automatically reload. So let's do that. It's up and running. It's listening on port 8081 here. So we can test a route in the application that will get us that same location information out of Redis. So back to the browser here. I can now do local host 8081 API location 200. So get location 200. And as we can see there, we've got the same information that we had in Insight and the same information that we had in Redis CLI. So if you get to this point, your application is up and running. You've got Redis running in a Docker container with all of the modules that you're going to need for this course. And you've got Redis Insight as a nice graphical way of, let's make that a bit smaller, a nice graphical way of viewing the data. So if you get to this point, all's good. And in the next module, what we'll do is we will start writing some code and start using some of this data in Redis and bring it out to the front end through the Node.js Express application. See you there.